There exists ideas, thoughts, takes so universally awful that it offends the very nature of the universe itself. Ideas so self-evidently retarded that they create their own gravity wells to suck in negative events to swiftly prove the idiocy of the idea. And this, oh my Jesus, this is one of those. Give Amazon and Facebook a seat at the United Nations. Oh, good God. Mr. Ben, if you are on the spectrum, which I presume you are, then, please disregard all of the critique I will be leveling at you in this video, because clearly you are not intelligent and to understand what you are talking about here, and you are excused. Though, to be fair, this entire article here does kind of try to lay out the point for why we should consider them nation-states by conflating some pretty ridiculous things like chairman, monarchs, oversight board, judges, customers, citizens. I don't think many of these actually work out. Like citizens, for example, that presumes that you have inherent rights as a citizen of a nation. And that too. So what is this? Terms and conditions? Legal codes? What was it? Mission statements? Constitutions? Absolute nonsense. It's stupid, but a lot of this setup is to try and make a point here at the end. Oh god. Here we have the man in the relationship, incidentally, and his wife behind him, of course, where they talk about one of the reasons why we might want to get them on the UN is because we would like to hold them to actual account for what they're doing. If brands have the power, wealth, and impact of nation-states and increasingly act like nation-states, should they not be brought into the nation-state community and held to account for what they really are, equals, allies, competitors, and threats? Now, keep that in mind for a second there, before we get back to this. So, what would be the requirements to be a nation-state? A certain level of organization, a certain level of power, a certain level of stability and security. Of course, there are exceptions to these rules, but by and large, nation-states are supposed to have a certain degree of strength, of power, of standing, of gravitas, of existence, of, if nothing else, political power and force. What has happened to Facebook? Oh yes. Again, the gravity well formed near instantly to this one, informing us yet again of the idiocy of the statement, as Facebook has been hacked and the data of 1.5 billion users is currently up for sale on a hacking site. There are even reports apparently that the Facebook employees have been locked out of their own offices because the hackers took control of the electronic door locks. I wouldn't put it past Facebook to hook up their door locks to a server with contact to the internet. I would not put it past them, and this isn't the first time. This isn't the second time. This isn't the third, fourth, or fifth time. These massive entities are awful. They are constantly involved in scandals, like the recent one, for example, revealing a two-tier system on social media, where celebrities or e-celebs or anyone that the Facebook moderated team liked got special status, and they were exempt from the usually rather strident and harsh measures carried out against anyone else. If you or I say one of the many verboten Voldemort words that have appeared in the English language over the course of the last 5 years, our asses are grass, like that. We are banned from social media, and in all due likelihood, since many of these platforms conspire together, as was demonstrated in the case of Alex Jones, you could be yeeted from literally everywhere. And yet, they have a two-tier system. Celebrities, the nobility, the privileged class, get to say what you peasants are not allowed to. And these... Actually, there's a point here as well. Before we get back to this whole impact of nation-states thing, because he does have a point there. The idea of moral arbitration. Now, they point out here that these companies often straight up break the law, and this happens frequently. Steam is another example of this. Not a massive nation-state level entity, I suppose, like Google, but Steam ignores the rights of consumers in pretty much every single nation it operates in. Amazon, Google, Netflix, Starbucks protested against restrictive voting laws in Georgia, Texas, and other states. Restrictive, as in requiring identification. This is on Bloomberg, so you know, a certain slant is unavoidable. But this too, Sunday Bombers create a relief fund supporting the reproductive rights of women and people across the gender spectrum who seek abortions in Texas. Now, this is a fund specifically set up to break the law in Texas. We also saw, of course, during the BLM Summer of Peaceful Riots, various companies promising to pay the legal fees of rioters. This is ridiculous, and it should not be allowed in any way, shape, or form. A state like... and this is the problem, right? The only reason why, right now, we are in a position where we can see headlines like this, where it's like, oh, give them a seat on the UN Council, is because the states have not figured out how to destroy these entities yet. And destruction is becoming remarkably necessary at this point, because right now we are unironically heading towards Cyberpunk. I have made this prediction previously, and my god, genuinely, that is where we are actually heading. As the article does make some good points about how certain nations, for example, don't have the financial power of these mega corporations. And again, the point they make about them playing fast and loose with the law, straight up disobeying laws, circumventing them, going through tax loopholes, registering their businesses in other nations, etc., all of this, and of course, skipping happily over various restrictions on monopolies or duopolies, etc. All of this are reasons for the states to actually act. That's the problem. We don't need to give these bumbling, moronic, and often straight-up evil entities access to the highest levers of power. We need to break their fingers so that they never dare reach for those levers ever again. And indeed, again, to be fair here, I was a bit mean to the article right to begin with, because it is a ridiculous prospect. But he does point out some interesting things as well here. We are so used to brands leaning towards liberalism. You and I have very different definitions of liberalism. Or at least paying lip service to it, and that's closer, that we risk mistaking cynical head fakes for genuine convictions. What happens if such liberal mass slips or are abandoned altogether? This is the key thing right here. Google doesn't care about liberal principles. Google is not a moral entity, and the fact that he brings up a statistic here, which I have no idea where he got it from. It sounds a little bit like Kavanagh's asshole kind of statistic, suggesting, I believe, that 68% of people assume, there we go, 68% of people thought CEOs should step in when governments fail to fix societal problems. Right, if that is the case, 68% of people need to be turned into nutrient paste, because they are clearly not living beings. Holy shit, this idea. Alright, let me just, I make this point every time, right? You have some influence over the government. You can vote, you can protest, you can write to your representative, you have influence. Now, you can argue it's not very much. Sure, you are just one person in a nation of millions, if not billions. This is true, but you have influence. Over Google, you have absolutely no influence over Google or Apple. Even if you begin buying stocks, you are going to have to spend millions, if not billions, before you even get your foot in the door. You have no power over these entities. It's so ridiculous. Like, people are actually arguing for an entity to take control over their lives and fix societal problems that they cannot control. Muy stupid. See, this topic does get me heated a little bit here. Oh, Christ. Alright, let me get back to it a little bit here, right? Amazon, Facebook, a seat in the United Nations. So let's get back to the idea of responsibility. Alright? Because... perfect. Fantastic. But this is not the way to do it. You don't give them more power and then go like, right, we have held you to an even higher standard now. We have given you even greater power and influence. Now we're gonna try and hold you to account. It is like handing a child a revolver and going, right, it's bedtime now. No, what needs to happen is that these companies, particularly like the alphabets of the world, break them up. Break them the goddamn up. Just a year ago, I was like, no, we'd rather avoid doing that because of the financial fallout, the damage it would do to our society, the amount of jobs lost, etc. But if this is where we are, if this are the opinion articles we see in Bloomberg, we are already too goddamn far down the bloody rabbit hole, aren't we? If a corporation tries to evade a law, ban them. Straight up, in Texas, if they try to circumvent Texan law, ban the company. Or even better yet, don't even ban them, just simply place so much in the way of penalty tariffs on them that they crake under the weight of them. Oh, what's that, Netflix? Right, you want to do something asshole? Very well then. Any service you offer in Texas is going to have a 50% tax put on it before profits. Just a flat 50% fee. And if you try to put that onto the customers, we're going to take you to court over it, and we're going to block you. Because that's the thing. That is the thing. Nation states can do that. Texas can do that. Texas can either simply refuse to do business with these companies, ban them outright from the state, or impose tariffs and levies upon them so unbelievably punishing that they will come crawling back on their goddamn knees begging for forgiveness. Why? Because Texas has people with guns. And thank God, for the time being, Google doesn't. And as much as I laugh at this idea, like, anthems, jingles, tagline, mottos, mission statements, constitutions, the only thing preventing these things from being actual literal reality is military force. Because at the end of the day, naked violence has settled more disputes than any other thing in human history. Might does make right. It is a simple fact, and luckily we live in relatively benevolent democracies. It took us a few thousand years to get here, and by God, let us not hand that over to Google, to Facebook, to Twitter. For the love of God, humanity, just... Right. You get my gist. Don't. No. They should not be elevated to the UN Council. They should be whittled down and broken apart until what we are debating is not elevating them to the state of the United Nations. It is elevating them to the point where they get to spread across to the next state next door. That is where we need to return to. Until next time, I have been Arch. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you all again soon. Until then, have a good day.